Hey everyone, it's time to get a snack and take a seat because we're going to have Lines on Paper Story Hour, this time featuring the rise and fall of Valiant Comics. So, first off, what was Valiant Comics? Well, Valiant Comics was a comic book company that was started in the late 1980s by Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter used to be an editor at Marvel Comics and actually oversaw one of their more successful eras, but he had a reputation for being a pretty demanding perfectionist, which drove him out of the company, and he took that demand for perfection into his new company, Valiant. And doing so, he brought top tier artists and writers to work for him and ended up creating a really solid batch of unique and interesting characters. They were fresh and unlike anything most people had seen on the comic shelves up until that point. And it really looked like Valiant was poised to take the comics world by storm. But unfortunately, shortly after Valiant formed, a plucky young group of artists went and formed their own indie startup called Image, and well, Valiant just couldn't compete with the characters and storytelling and visuals that Image Comics had to offer. So it was time for Valiant to just kind of quietly fade off into obscurity. But then come around the early 2010s, and Valiant reemerges with a big money investor and top tier talent once again. They launched a brand new #1 Bloodshot comic, which actually debuted at pretty high numbers. It had really good artwork, and they had updated the character for the more modern day storytelling. And they had come along with a promise that these comics were going to be top tier creative talent working on them. You were going to get awesome artists, awesome writers, and books that could compete easily with the big two any day of the week. And they really delivered. Their first round batches of comics were awesome. They brought some of the top industry talent on board and actually were able to deliver solid comics that people were getting excited about. And it really looked like Valiant had come along and hit its stride finally. They even struck a deal with Sony Motion Pictures to form their own cinematic universe similar to Marvel's, and they launched a Bloodshot movie, which unfortunately flopped, and the cinematic universe never really came to be, and their comic sales kind of started to take a little bit of a dip afterwards. So they decided to make a change, and they went ahead and decided to hire somebody a bit more diverse. They went and got Heather Antos and Lisa Hawkins, two editors that had worked on some pretty high profile projects for the big two, like overseeing Star Wars books and overseeing Vertigo. So, unfortunately, while they had a lot of social media followers, they didn't really seem to pay attention to the end result of their body of work. And well, modern Valiant went from looking like this to looking like this. Gone was the promise of top tier art and storytelling, replaced by just this flat, low effort coloring books art style. I mean, this is a visual storytelling comic books is. And this is what they're going to bring us, this kind of indie comic amateur hour type stuff. It just didn't fly. Not after the way this company was launched and not after the first wave of books that they had given us. And then the storytelling started to get a lot more into the woke territory. So you had writing that was just as ugly as the artwork. And well, it started to reflect in the sales. And now here we are towards the end of 2022. And Valiant Comics started off with a few late checks going to their creators. Now we have word that pretty much their entire top tier staff and top editors and marketing department and everything else has been laid off. And as far as I know, we don't have very many projects going much further than now. So it looks like Valiant Comics is just kind of circling the drain. And what can we learn from all this? Where does this go? What is the moral to this story? Well, the moral to this story is you don't want to just use the old adage, get woke, go broke, but they got woke and they went broke. They gambled on the same failed creative policies and creative decisions that have tanked these other companies. But unfortunately, unlike DC and Marvel, Valiant did not have the wherewithal to withstand this kind of a downturn. And things like woke comics and books that are made just to win awards, get accolades from critics, and please people on social media who are never going to buy a comic book, that's really great when the economy is strong and money is plentiful. But when money's getting tight, investors are drying up, they're not putting money into these companies anymore, you don't have the promise of a blockbuster movie anymore to draw in new investors, and you've got fans that are now turned off to your company, that's a recipe for disaster. And more companies are going to be learning this lesson as time goes on, I fear. This is probably the end of Valiant Comics. Will they resurge again? Who knows? They did it once, they could do it again. But for now, for this era, they're gone. And they've got nobody to blame but themselves. They hired the wrong people. they greenlit the wrong projects and they backed the wrong horse. And in the end, unfortunately, it's the readers and fans that they created with their relaunch that are going to have to pay the price for that. Had they continued with their original plan of getting talented artists, getting talented writers, they don't even have to be established names. There are plenty of artists out there desperate for work that could draw circles around what New Valiant had put forth. So this was a dilemma of their own making. And unfortunately, it's RIP for Valiant Comics by all indicators. So that's it. Thus concludes Lines on Paper storytelling for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope we learned something. I hope we learned something about how to run a comic book company. And I hope other companies, especially smaller ones, take note to the fate of Valiant Comics, because Valiant Comics looked to be a force to be reckoned with in the comics industry not more than 7 years ago. And here they are, circling the drain, if not already 1 foot in the grave. So that's it. That's the tale, boys and girls. Let's talk about it in the comments below. Are you going to miss Valiant Comics? Did you follow the new books? Did you like the Bloodshot movie? I thought it was actually pretty terrible. I didn't like the Bloodshot movie at all. But let's talk about it in the comments below. While you're down there, do all the usual things. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Of course, I'd love to have you here. And share this video with your friends. It really helps the channel grow, helps us get picked up by the algorithm, get in front of more and more people, and helps build the community, which is really a strong and fun community. I really, like I always say, I love talking to you guys in the comment section, and that's what we'll look forward to do after this video. So I will see you then, and I will see you next video. Talk to you then. Bye.